course, we get to speak to Councillor Abby Brown, Deputy Leader at Stoke-on-Trent City Council, getting a little bit of a city roundup and viewpoint from the council, and it's great to have her on the line once again this afternoon. Afternoon, Abby.
Afternoon, Jonathan.
Thanks very much for joining us once again. I got three stories in particular I wanted to pick up with you from the last month and a half. The first one, all about new housing plans, hopefully to bring a boost to Burslem. And I think you got plans to develop a redundant factory site with brand new homes. Tell us a little bit more about those plans.
So, I think, as you say, we were recently awarded towards the end of last year £10 million by the government to support bringing houses forward. I think there's kind of a lot of mystique around building houses, but often it's quite difficult, particularly on brownfield sites like we have a lot of really in Stoke-on-Trent. And there's quite a lot of remediation that needs to take place in terms of ensuring that the accesses into these places are fine and that the foundations are okay. And often, really, the gap between being able for developers to build the houses and what they can actually invest in doing this is significant, really. That means that actually, although we'd love and we do encourage, and actually 95% of properties that were built in the city last year were built on brownfield sites, there is often a need to kind of bridge that gap to ensure that that's what happens, as opposed to perhaps them building on easier to develop sites that are maybe greenfield sites. So this money we bid for from the government because we want houses in Stoke-on-Trent. We want people to come and live here and experience a great quality of life, but we needed to secure some money to help, and that money has been able to do that. And the area that we focused on is Burslem, which is a cracking little town, brilliant, absolutely fantastic, lots to see there in terms of fabulous architecture and a real community buzz around the place, but really not a huge amount of housing, but quite a lot of empty brownfield sites. So we put forward 10 sites there, and the first of those sites has come forward now. So we've, obviously spoken to the developer, it's St Modwyn in this case, and said to them, we have some money to support your house building ambitions, to help make the site, Nile Street, which I know lots and lots of your listeners will be familiar with, to make that come forward. And I think a couple of weeks ago they announced their plans.
And this is going to go on the Royal Dalton Works site, I believe. Is that right?
It is, yes, that's the one. Lots of people will remember that site, and the iconic gates are still there at the moment.
So will those gates stay there, do you think, as like a nice entranceway?
I'm not sure whether there'll be an entranceway, but certainly I know St Modwyn have every intention of retaining them in some way on the site in a suitable location, because I think, as you say, they are key to the site, and lots of people will be familiar with them.
Fantastic. You mentioned there about the difficulty of transforming brownfield sites and the need to kind of put extra money in to be able to make it viable for developers. In terms of identifying those brownfield sites, I guess part of this is just the legacy, is it, of the kind of pottery industry decline over the years? Is that right?
It is, yes. I think, the situation we find ourselves in is not uncommon to that. In other post-industrial towns where there's been kind of a traditional industry there that's gone, and it leaves behind empty industrial land, really. So it's nothing specific to Stoke, but it is something that's quite common in industrial cities and towns.
But Stoke-on-Trent is a great place to start up business, apparently, and I thought this was a great story. It's just been named the 6th best city in the UK to start a business in 2019, beating rivaling cities including London, Manchester, Liverpool and Birmingham. Was that a surprise for you when you heard that announcement?
Well, of course not. I think it was a nice, pleasant surprise. I know that Stoke-on-Trent's a great place to set up a business, having set up a business here myself in the past, and I absolutely thoroughly enjoyed running a business here in the city and serving residents of the fine town of Longton. So really, it wasn't a surprise, but I think it's kind of nice sometimes as well to remind ourselves that this is a great place to start up a business. I think, we've been a city that traditionally has been quite entrepreneurial and had businesses start up here, and alongside that announcement as well, I've seen data recently that suggests that actually not only do businesses like to start up here, the cost of establishing a business here is really reasonable, and actually we're really well located if you want to service the whole of the UK, but also businesses tend to survive here, which is something we've perhaps struggled with in the past. Businesses have set up, but they haven't necessarily survived for a huge amount of time, certainly not kind of into the 3 and 4 years and certainly data I've seen recently suggests that that is improving, which again is great. We want businesses to start here, we want them to stay here, and we want them to feel that they've got every chance of succeeding here in Stoke-on-Trent.
Absolutely, and that was one of the real strengths, wasn't it? I think it was Absolutely, and that was one of the real strengths, wasn't it? I think it was 39.3% of businesses in Stoke-on-Trent survived their initial 5-year startup, which is 3.2% more than Glasgow, 1.8% more than Manchester. So it is a great place to come and begin. One of the other things it picked up on was about tourism and how tourism's played a large part in making Stoke-on-Trent a desirable place to start a company. Now that's a big economical opportunity. Tourism, isn't it? Do you see trying to increase our stake on that sector in the coming years?
Oh yes, absolutely. I think last year, the figures that have just been released, which are for 2017, we broke 5 million visitors coming to Stoke-on-Trent, which was something I'd hoped for. Obviously, 2017 was the year that we bid to be UK City of Culture, and we put a huge amount of effort into promoting the city and promoting the offer here. And I want to see that figure grow. We have some fantastic attractions here within the city. Weald of Wedgwood, Emma Bridgewater, I think have both just been recently confirmed as highly recommended locations to visit for Visit England, the country's tourism board. We have lots of really great stuff happening, increasing visitors going to see Potters Museum and Art Gallery, where we'll soon be starting work on the new extension, and of course loads of green space as well all around us that's brilliant to go and see. I think our offer continues to improve in the city centre. We've got more bed space. I think that's one of the things that always comes out in these visitor surveys. We don't have many people who come and stay, or if they do, they stay with relatives, and the reason for that is simply that we don't have the beds. It's not because people don't want to, it's because we don't necessarily have somewhere for them to go and stay overnight. So it's great to see hotels coming forward, and I hear when I talk to the hotel operators that occupancy is really high in our hotels. So it isn't because people don't want to, it's literally because we need to have more hotels here in the city.
That's fantastic. And I know that you're implementing a very strong tourism visitor strategy for the city. The other things that have come out recently, which kind of just shows that Stoke-on-Trent is registering across the country, is last year the city was listed as one of the top 12 places for city living and came 16th in a YouGov study asking 55,000 people if they liked particular cities across England, which is great because I remember back in 2001 when we were ranked the worst place to live in England and Wales. Now we're getting in the top of the charts for things.
Yes, absolutely. I think, it's been a concerted push for the last few years to kind of talk positively about the city. And obviously, that I'm well known for my Stokers on the Up hashtag that I use a lot on social media. And I think, there's been a huge groundswell of people who've got behind that because actually this is a great place to live. So much to do, so much potential. You have the feel of a big city with the benefits that you get from living in a larger conurbation, but you also get some of the benefits you get from being somewhere that's a bit more intimate. So, we have the advantages of all the towns around us as well, and the uniqueness of some of the qualities there, plus great green space both within the city and also really close to us as well on the periphery. Why wouldn't you want to live here?
Absolutely. Do you feel that we've still got momentum going forward? I mean, because obviously we pushed forward, and the thing with pushing forward is you can reach a plateau type thing, but in terms of the development of the city, do you think we're still gathering momentum?
Yes, I think very much so. I think, we're kind of reaching a crucial crossroads, and I don't just say that because we have elections in the next few months, but I think also in terms of the development that's coming forward. I see developments like Smithfield. The Smithfield buildings are now full, but I drove past the other day, and the hotel is nearly up to its highest limits, as is the apartment blocks that are coming forward. Demolition is happening at the moment on the old bus station, and lots of interest at the moment around what the plans are moving forward with those. And certainly, I spent a good few nights, not so many weeks ago in Burslem with Light Night Festival, with literally thousands of people coming out to see what's happening in the city at the moment. I think, we really are kind of on the periphery of something really brilliant in the city.
Doesn't mean there aren't also issues too, and modern slavery, human trafficking is one that you're really focused on, I believe. In fact, today I think the Cabinet was meeting, wasn't it? Or is it still to meet? I'm not sure. But to look at modern slavery and human trafficking in Stoke-on-Trent, and you want to see it eradicated. That's the pledge of civic leaders. Tell us a little bit more behind this.
So this is, I think one of those issues that perhaps has been quite hidden in the past. Perhaps people have not been quite as aware of what it encompasses. Maybe thinking perhaps that they're not, it doesn't really exist nowadays. But actually, I think, it's quite insidious and it exists in ways that people wouldn't necessarily realise. Perhaps people being coerced to do things like cultivate drugs drugs really, involvement in prostitution, people trafficking and those sorts of things. And sadly, it does go on all across the UK, and I think, kind of this growing focus on that has really brought it to the fore. Not so many months ago, the modern-day slavery and human trafficking within the city. I think it's a really important issue, and I think it's important that organisations like the City Council firmly put their flag in the ground, as it were, and say, we don't think this is acceptable, and this is what we're going to do to play our part in trying to combat it within the city.
Now, obviously, we're the biggest conurbation in Staffordshire, but at the same time, I understand between 37 and 53% of all victims of human trafficking and modern slavery are in Stoke-on-Trent. So in terms of eradicating it, what specifically can the council do? What are you looking to implement to try to deal with it?
Well, I think really, as I say, this has been to a degree a bit of a hidden thing that's been going on because people are not necessarily aware what it is. Obviously, we're one of the biggest employers in the city. We spend a lot of money in the city. We're very keen to ensure that the Stoke pound stays in Stoke. So, we have our own supply chains as well there. And I think one of the first and easy steps that we're able to take is by raising awareness of this through our own staff. So we will have a training programme that means that our employees and our supply chains are aware of the potential around this and what might be something that perhaps alerts people to something that's happening, not necessarily directly in something that we are doing as a city council. I think that our employees and our supply chains are aware of the potential around this and what might be something that perhaps alerts people to something that's happening, not necessarily directly in something that we are doing as a city council. I don't believe that we are involved in those sorts of practices, and neither are our supply chain. But of course, we deal with lots of people on a day-to-day basis, and our employees deal with people. So it's raising awareness of it as an issue, both amongst our own staff, but also with people we deal with. And I think also, crucially, the fact that people like me are talking about this. Actually, I'm talking to you today, and lots of your listeners will perhaps be thinking, I wonder what that's about, and maybe go away. But also, we will be renewing this policy every 12 months. So every 12 months will be another opportunity to talk about this and to raise the issue.
Is that one of the issues, do you think, that we don't talk about it, so that's why it remains hidden, because we kind of hide it?
Yes, I think absolutely. I think, that it's about that awareness around where it might touch our lives that we're perhaps not aware. I think, there is those kind of obvious scenarios that you maybe think about to do with, I don't know, perhaps prostitution or things like that, where you think it maybe touches on those. But I think there's all other sorts of elements within our lives that things like this touch that really we don't think about. So, perhaps shoplifting, people who are forced to work in unbearable conditions through domestic servitude. These things sadly do go on within the life of the city and of the UK, but perhaps people are not as aware of them, and hopefully by talking about them, people will be, and maybe take a second look in future.
I understand the council is working with Voice of Hope, which is a Stoke-on-Trent charity that raises awareness about modern slavery and human trafficking, and they do some fantastic presentations. I was at one recently, and they talk about how we as the general public can be part of the solution in terms of looking for the signs of modern slavery and being able to report them. So that's quite good to have an organisation like that in our city, isn't it?
It is, absolutely, and I know that we've started a dialogue with Voice of Hope around how we can ensure that our training is robust. And really, I think we are looking for members of the public to be engaged with this. Certainly, as the City Council, as a large employer, we're keen to be engaged with this. And I think, as a politician, and I guess as one of the council spokesmen, I'm keen as well to see other institutions around the city and further beyond take a similar stance to ourselves and say, actually, do you know what, this is not acceptable, and this is what we're going to do as part of the solution to this issue.
Very good. Abby Brown, thank you once again for joining us on Cross Rhythms. Bye-bye.